Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Before I get into my main thing, a quick note about the consent agenda and what Councilor Staggers pulled out of there about the indoor pool. I was reading an interesting story today, and I encourage you all to go to cbsnews.com and read it. It's about a guy who built a house in Rhode Island, $1.8 million home. He built it on a state park and didn't realize it because the developer never told him. So then he went to go try to sell the home, and the state said, it's a park. It was only designated supposed to be a park. And basically told him he owes the state $1.5 million so he can sell his home and remove it. Kind of goes back to Spellerberg and the quitclaim deed and how that should be really straightened out before an indoor pool is built there, or otherwise we could have ourselves a similar situation. I just happened to come across the story. I wanted to talk about all the money that was spent in the city election. I always do a fun little math thing where you take the campaign finance reports, and then you take the number of votes the winning candidates get and the losing candidates get and how much money they spent per vote. I'd have to say the big winner of the night was probably Snowgates. They spent $0 on each vote, and they got over 77% of the vote. The unfortunate part about that is we could have used Snowgates this last winter, but certain councilors decided to vote against a special election. It's obvious that citizens wanted the Snowgates, but there were certain people on the council that didn't believe we needed them. Like I said, big winners of the night. Big losers of the night were Walmart. Oh yeah, they got their zoning pushed through, but they spent $23.56 per vote, $468,000 to convince people to put in a Walmart. I told someone they should have just sent out gift cards. They probably would have got more votes. Number two was Mayor Huether. He spent $12.35 a vote. What I found was the winners spent double per vote than what the losers spent. I guess the thing that we need to look at here is the city is that campaign financing is getting kind of out of control. There needs to be some limits set, not only through the state legislature, but also citywide, how much money can be spent. I think it's kind of disgusting that a private international corporation can come in and spend $23.56 per vote. You know what their opposition spent? 29 cents per vote. Walmart spent 81 times more than the opposition. A grassroots effort. It's time that we take money out of these elections. I was trying to find some information today. When Mayor Munson ran for his first term, I remember the big hoopla. There was a lot of money being spent. His competitor spent more money to him, Mr. Brown, and I can't remember how much it was. But I believe Mayor Munson spent about $25,000, and he beat Brown, and Brown spent more. I think, geez, that wasn't that many years ago. And now we have $468,000 being spent on a zoning issue for land that Walmart doesn't even own. Like I said, I don't know how much the city council can do, but it was something that public services really needs to look at. This kind of money being spent is atrocious. It is corrupting our town, it's corrupting our system, and it's leaving citizens out of the process. I see citizen after citizen walk up here and make their claims and denied by this council that's funded by these special interests. And I don't know if this is a state legislature thing or if it's a city council thing. This really needs to be looked at. We need to have regular citizens being able to come up here and have their voice heard and to run for city council and not be competed by, people spending $23.56 a vote. I can't imagine if I ran for city council where I would come up with $23.56 for 3,500 people to vote for me. It needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome.
Bruce Danielson, Sioux Falls Citizens for Integrity. I want to welcome Ms. Erickson and Mr. Kiley to the council. I haven't had a chance to come up and say congratulations and for your seats on the council. And I've been coming up here the last couple of years a little more often, trying to get some things understood, even by me, to try and understand why the city council and the city in general does things, and why they don't seem to want to pay any attention to the citizens on many issues. Scott brought up the Snowgate issue, and we're going through the pool, you know, just asking questions. We've had some really strange and interesting elections that have happened, and you know, with the event center and a few other things, and all these things seem to bother us, and so I just, you know, it comes down to asking a real simple question, and it's been asked of what the definition of insanity is, and you keep doing the same thing over and over again. We got a panic message last night about don't use water, don't flush your toilets, just, you know, go to bed without doing whatever it is you do before you go to bed, apparently. And why did we get that message last night? You know, it's poor planning. You know, so we ended up with a bunch of street flooding last night, all over town, all over the area. We have a problem with down on 85th Street, and 85th Street floods down into where Schindler Creek starts. And all that now flows down to all those people that are living downstream, and they all got flooded. Look what happened to Harrisburg with all that extra water that's coming from the developments here in Sioux Falls, because none of this stuff is being planned for. The retention ponds aren't big enough that are called for. You know, where's the developers' involvement in all of this? So, and speaking of the developers, where's their contribution for the infrastructure that they're supposed to be putting in to match on the streets? I understand they're way behind and getting caught up. You know, where's our $9 or $11 million for infrastructure that was borrowed for the working on the Sioux River work, which is now going into a plaything, a toy that is doing nothing for the infrastructure of Sioux Falls. Last night was a fine example when I was watching my rain gauge fill. You know, I got an inch of rain in 20 minutes. We don't have the infrastructure in this town to handle this kind of stuff, and if you do any kind of climate study at all, you'll see that we're going to be continually getting more of it. So, you know, do we take and park boats over on Phillips Avenue so that those pedestrians have some way to get from, you know, one side of the street to the other? I know infrastructure is boring to many, and, you know, it's possibly very boring to you people sitting before me. But we can't put an edifice, it becomes boring because there isn't going to be some grand big building when it's all done that's going to have a fancy interior, exterior, whatever you want it to have, and a bronze plaque with your names on it in the end. Infrastructure is that thing that's underneath us that makes this a town that can grow. And right now I'm not seeing real solid work being done for infrastructure, especially when we take money that was set aside, that was borrowed specifically for infrastructure, and gets put into a plaything. So my other definition for insanity is Sioux Falls is always planning for the past. We never seem to really look forward to the future. And how much are we going to borrow needlessly for all this poor planning? In the future, as things start collapsing, just like when we dumped into the Sioux River and got that minuscule $10,000 fine or whatever it was because we had to dump all our sewer line in because the sewer lines were blowing up in town a few years ago. You know, what else is going to be blowing up around here? I understand we might get anywhere from 2 to 5 inches more rain this week. There's that possibility. Where's that going to go with our ground already wet? Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Folks, welcome.
Good evening, Greg Neitzer. Before I talk about what I originally was going to talk about, I guess I'd just like to say, for my part, just responding to Scott, I started Forward Zoning, as many of you know, which was a group that advocated for the adoption of shaped places. I guess you could say we outspent our competitors. I think I alone contributed more to our group than the entire other group spent. I'm just an ordinary person. I just believed in the cause. I'm not a bigwig. I'm not a developer. I just believed in the cause and believed in what I was doing, and it was the first time I'd ever done anything like it, and anybody else is free to do it, so I would just encourage anybody who wants to do it. It's there for the taking. You just got to go for it. What I came to talk about, as I said, most of you know that I was involved in advocating for shaped places, but it's a large ordinance, and with any large ordinance, nothing is perfect. It's not perfect. There's one area that I believe that needs to be addressed, and that would be off-premise signs, otherwise known as billboards to the layperson. Under the old ordinance, billboards were allowed in the industrial district and in the C2 commercial district, and C2 essentially hasn't been used in many years, so it essentially relegated billboards to just certain corridors like Cliff Avenue and Minnesota and 41st Street, and none of the, what I guess you would say is newer areas. Under shaped places, billboards are now allowed on any commercial property where the structure on it is greater than 4,000 square feet, which means just about any commercial property could now have a billboard. It opens up a lot of doors, and we're already seeing that. We saw that at the Board of Adjustment meeting last night, of which I am a member. We had a couple hearings on that. I don't think the vast majority of citizens or the council are probably even aware of it. It was kind of an arcane change, so it was easy to miss. There's no required separation distances for billboards to any sensitive use. That would include residential properties. So if you were adjacent to a commercial property, a billboard could get placed right next door to you. There's no separation distance. That would include illuminated and electronic signs. So that's something that I don't think anybody is aware of, and we need to be thinking about. I believe such a big policy change deserves discussion sooner than later. I think we need to ask ourselves, are we okay with more billboards? Are we okay with billboards located just about anywhere we have commercial? Are we okay with billboards including illuminated or electronic close to adjacent to residential uses? This sort of change really needs a public discussion. I would encourage the council and specifically the land use committee to take this up sooner than later so we can decide what we want to do as a community. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Folks, welcome.
Yes, my name is Virginia Graham. I live here in Sioux Falls. We had a standoff at an apartment building of ours on May 7th, 513 Southwestern. I suppose you've seen it on TV and also in the paper. There was a fellow chased from Jefferson Avenue right over to our building by the police department. He ran into a laundry room of ours in the basement of one of our units. The police finally threw bombs or something in there, busted out every window in the apartment. When I called down to talk to the chief of police, I thought maybe I'd get an answer, you know. And she said, oh, bring a bill down to the city hall, no department or anything, and we'll take care of it. You call Mike Hall, and he'll take care of the whole situation. Well, I called Mike Hall, and his answer was, turn it over to your insurance, and you probably ought to get a lawyer. Well, who pays the deductible and who pays the lawyer? You know, I didn't have the problem. So anyway, he said he would talk to the sergeant in charge that night. Okay, I'll wait for a call. 2 weeks later, still no call. I don't know where the sergeant moved to or where my call was for 2 weeks, but he wasn't around. So can anyone just walk up and bust up somebody else's property, including the Sioux Falls Police Department, and nobody has to pay anything? Somebody ought to be accountable for this. I mean, they pulled up in the front yard with this big SWAT team truck parked on the lawn. The driveway was 5 to 6 feet away. They could have parked in the driveway instead of pulling right front on the lawn and leaving big tracks from the big old truck sitting there. Well, to this day, I've heard nothing. But they want it secured, and they want us to do this, and they want us to do that, but they ain't coming up with an answer on who's going to pay the bill. Should the landlord absorb this? I mean, don't look to me like we should have to absorb it. So I think we ought to be getting some kind of an answer here on this from somebody. Okay?
Very good. We'll have Mike Hall follow up with you. I'll certainly get in touch with him tomorrow and have him follow up so that you
Yeah.
can get an answer one way or the
I
other.
mean, we had to order the windows because the frames were actually unrepairable. There was no way you could cut glass and fix it. You had to order new windows. So it took 3 weeks to get the windows. The windows are now here and the new doors put on, and we plan on securing it, but I don't think it should cost us a dime to do this.
Thank you, Virginia.
Okay?
Thank you.
I thank you.
Folks, is there anybody else who wants to engage the council? Very good.